How do you determine whether tactics, behavior, or conduct in a negotiation is ethical? Well, start by assessing the influences on the negotiation. The economic influences, how is value changing hands? 2, what are the legal influences? Are there any laws or regulations that somehow control the conduct? And lastly, the equitable influences. What do you perceive as fair in the given situation, and what do third parties perceive as fair in a given situation? Once you have an understanding here, you can start to develop and evaluate courses of action that will 1, achieve your objectives, 2, meet with the rules and principles applicable to the situation, 3, comply with the norms or societal values of your organization or community, and lastly, meet with your personal convictions. Now, what are some approaches you can use to do this? Well, first is the front page test. And this, as the name implies, you ask yourself, if you put this out there to the world on the front page of the newspaper, everything you did, all of your tactics or behavior in the negotiation, would you be okay with that? Would the rest of the world see that as fair? Would you be embarrassed about it, or would you in any way be ashamed of it? So basically, you're asking yourself, how would the world see it? Next, the reverse golden rule. You can ask yourself, if you were in the other party's position, if you were in their shoes, if you will, would you think that the other side were treating you fairly if they acted that way to you? So if you ask this, it takes a different perspective and uses that perspective to gauge your conduct. You're putting yourself in that position to see how others would treat you. And if you felt like it was unfair or unjust, well, perhaps you shouldn't act like that to another person. Okay. Next, role modeling. If someone were looking up to you and you were trying to be a model or set a example for another person, if they watched your conduct or learned about your conduct, would you feel proud about that? Would you believe that you actually stood up as a role model for that person? So again, this can gauge your conduct. And lastly, third-party advice. The front page test put it out there to the world, but you're thinking about how the world would see your conduct. Third-party advice is when you seek direct advice from somebody you trust, you believe is ethical themselves, and so you value their opinion, and you believe if they perceive something as being ethical, you are in alignment with that thought sufficiently that you also would believe it was ethical. So you're seeking this third-party counsel. So just as a recap, in determining whether behavior or tactics that you use in a negotiation is ethical, first, evaluate all the influences on the negotiation that can affect that. 2, evaluate the courses of action that are available and choose one that meets those requirements for personal and external compliance with all of those influences that affect you. And then here are some common tests that you can use to ask yourself, do I perceive this as being ethical if I use these different approaches? And this is how you determine whether conduct in a negotiation is ethical.